Michael Williams had been humiliated and expelled from a prestigious university simply because of the color of his skin. Professors mocked him, students avoided him, and the administration shattered his dream. But several years later, Michael returned, not as a student, but as the university's president, ready to dismantle the very system that had once tried to destroy him. His response to this injustice would surprise even the most seasoned observers. But let's go back to the beginning. Michael Williams enrolled in the prestigious university with high hopes. This was his chance, his path to realizing his dream. However, from day one, he noticed that his presence caused discomfort. Students avoided talking to him, and some openly ignored him. This became particularly apparent during a seminar when his desk neighbors demonstratively moved away as soon as he took his seat. Things worsened when Michael began participating in class discussions. Despite being well prepared, his answers were often interrupted by comments like, "Are you sure you understand the topic?" Or, "Maybe you should study this again." These weren't overt insults, but each remark felt like a jab, isolating Michael further. The real blow came during a crucial economics lecture. The professor, an old conservative with years of experience, was explaining a complex market relationship model. Michael raised his hand to ask a question, and for a moment, the room fell silent. The professor, tilting his head and smirking with barely concealed contempt, said, "Mr. Williams, I hope you truly understand what you're asking. This is a complicated subject." The audience responded with quiet laughter. Michael steeled himself, suppressing his inner doubts, and asked his question. Instead of answering, the professor chuckled and turned back to the board, ignoring Michael entirely. At that moment, he realized that he would never be treated as an equal in this university. During the break, several students approached him, mocking the professor's words. One of them sneered, "Maybe you should go back to where you came from." These words ignited a deep sense of injustice within Michael. He understood that the system he had entered wasn't just biased, it was actively working against him. After the humiliation in class, Michael tried to focus on his studies, but the feeling of isolation grew. Every step in the university was now accompanied by disapproving glances, sarcastic comments, and whispers behind his back. His classmates ignored him. Group projects went on without his participation, and some students even openly expressed their disdain. The issues weren't limited to the students. Professors also began treating Michael with suspicion and bias. His papers were given low grades, despite the effort he put into them. In one of his economics history courses, the professor bluntly stated that Michael did not meet the high standards of the university, and that a student like him would struggle to graduate. Michael realized he was up against the entire system. The most painful moment came when the university administration decided to revoke his scholarship. The official reason was insufficient academic performance. Though everyone knew it wasn't his grades, but his skin color, that was the issue. This decision hit him hard. Without financial support, continuing his education became impossible. He turned to his advisor for help, but the advisor coldly responded that he couldn't do anything, hinting that there are more deserving students at the university. Michael felt his dreams crumbling before his eyes. Every day at the university was a reminder that he wasn't welcome there. But despite everything, his family remained his rock. His grandmother, a wise woman with a wealth of life experience, supported him, saying, "We've always fought for our place in the sun, Michael. Never give up." Her words became his guiding light during these difficult times. He decided to keep fighting despite the pressure. Michael filed a discrimination complaint against the university, but it was rejected without much explanation. Still, the fire inside him to keep pushing burned brightly. Michael began looking into transferring to another university while exploring other options that might help him continue his education. But the system proved stronger. A few months later, he was officially expelled from the university. After his expulsion, Michael found himself on the brink of despair, but he refused to let it break him. He knew his expulsion was the result of systemic injustice, and this experience only strengthened his resolve. The first months were tough. Without a scholarship and university support, he had to take on several low-paying jobs to support himself and his family. But Michael didn't abandon his education. He enrolled in another university, less prestigious but more inclusive, where he found support and understanding. Here, not only did he continue his studies, but he also became an active advocate for equal rights and inclusive education. Michael quickly became a prominent figure among students, fighting for reforms in the education system aimed at eliminating racial discrimination. With each passing year, his accomplishments grew more significant. Michael graduated with honors, and his papers on systemic racism in educational institutions were published in academic journals. He became a well-known activist, speaking at conferences and forums, sharing his experiences, and inspiring other students facing discrimination. His work attracted the attention of major educational organizations, and soon Michael was offered a position at a leading foundation focused on education reform. By this point, he had become a recognized expert in his field, developing programs to support Black students in educational institutions across the country. Yet Michael never forgot what he had been through. His primary motivation remained the fight for justice for students like him who faced prejudice. One day, after speaking at a forum, he was approached by a representative from the university that had once expelled him with an unexpected offer. They invited Michael to return, not as a student, but as a candidate for the position of president. When Michael was offered the position of president at the very university that had once expelled him, he was stunned. Memories of the pain and humiliation resurfaced. But Michael knew this was his chance not just to restore justice, but to change the system from within. He spent a long time reflecting on the offer, consulting with loved ones, and ultimately decided to accept it. Returning to the university was a moment of personal victory. Now, walking through the same halls where he had once been ridiculed and humiliated, he felt not anger, but a deep understanding of the importance of his mission. Some professors who had once looked down on him could barely hide their embarrassment. Students, unaware of his past, saw the new president and sensed that important changes were happening. From his first day as president, Michael initiated reforms. He launched programs to support students from underprivileged and marginalized backgrounds, ensuring they had access to resources and scholarships. He revised the admissions policy, implementing fairer and more inclusive approaches. Michael also introduced mandatory courses on social justice and anti-discrimination for both students and staff. There was, of course, resistance. Some members of the old guard on the university's board were not ready to embrace such radical changes. They felt Michael was going too far with his reforms, but his popularity among students and support from external educational organizations made it difficult for them to oppose him openly. Michael was confident that in time, the results of his work would prove that the system could be fair to everyone. In his first major speech as president, Michael said, "I was once a student here, and I faced bias and injustice. Today, I return to change this place. The university should be a place where everyone can realize their potential, regardless of their skin color, background, or financial situation." His words were met with a storm of applause from students, many of whom saw him as a symbol of change. Years after his humiliation, Michael Williams returned to the place that had once rejected him to transform the system that had been set against him. It was his triumphant return, not for revenge, but to make the university a fairer place for future generations.